right, it's not been fun for Met fans this year. And maybe yesterday it hits a turning point because we got a report out in this game, and I mentioned it during the show. I got a little text from my Meet the Mess hotline that there's reports out there, according to one Buster Olney, the Metropolitans will be in discussions to move Mad Max and Justin Verlander before the trade deadline, #LGM. And maybe, Adam, this is on the heels of Mad Max giving up not one, not two, not three, but 4 bombs yesterday in that loss to Boston. He's been underwhelming, to say the least. Verlander's looked better as of late. But if you look at this, and we got markets out there for where will Mad Max end up, I'm not laying 3-1 that he stays in New York now. The Rangers are at plus 850. Dodgers, where Max has already done that short-term rental before from D.C., right now he's plus 950. Then you get to the long shots. O's 15-1, Giants 18-1, Reds and beyond. Do you think Boston is just out of the running for one of these two studs, or at least former studs?
Yeah, are the Red Sox even on the list?
No.
I don't think the Red Sox want to pay that kind of money for. I know he's not a rental, obviously. He's under contract next year, but that's just really since the Chris Sale contract, which has been an unmitigated disaster, and some of the money they even the David Price contract, and yes, he helped them win a World Series, but his contract was gross, which was why he was traded away when he was. That's just not an ownership group that they're trying to build their organization now in the model of the Tampa Bay Rays. It's why they brought Chaim Bloom in from there to attempt to sort of rebuild things and spend differently. They're not looking to hand a pitcher $40+ million, especially an aging pitcher. So there's no way. The team that's on this list, and you mentioned them, that if I were to bet on this, and I haven't decided, maybe I will at some point, I have not yet, but if I were to make a bet on this, the one that really intrigues me is the Cincinnati Reds. This is a team that, has obviously, since the promotion of De La Cruz, has been really overall scorching hot, has, come from the depths of misery to take on the division lead. This is a team that is going to win the division. It is a team that is going to go to the playoffs, obviously. The pitching staff, that's where they need to figure something out. Their starters have an ERA, a team ERA of right around 6. It is one of the worst starting staff ERAs in all of baseball, maybe third, fourth worst. It is terrible. They need to figure something out at that position. They need a stud. The rotation, again, there's no veteran presence like a Max Scherzer there who could really help them out. They have the prospects, oh, by the way, to get a deal done as well. I just think it's too logical a fit to not put a little money on.
I love that idea. And for long-suffering Met fans, that takes us back to the Tom Seaver days of trading Tom Seaver to Cincinnati. Maybe Max Scherzer a little bit long in the tooth now these days, but I think that actually would be a pretty good spot for him. Let's look at Goldie in St. Louis. They love Paul Goldschmidt. I think he's been what they expected when they acquired him a couple moons ago. Now, you got to lay $4 if you think he's not going anywhere. Their GM is on record saying we're going to be sellers at the deadline. It doesn't mean that they're going to sell Arenado and or Paul Goldschmidt. But it's interesting because the Cardinal way is the new way feels like acquire players like a Contreras from Chicago, like Goldschmidt, like Aaron. These are not homegrown guys. Do you think they move him? And if so, where could be a possible destination at a good price point?
No, I really don't. I didn't dive too deep into where could he go because I don't think he's going anywhere. You mentioned it. The GM there has, been on the record saying that even if they are sellers, they're not moving any core pieces. So Goldschmidt's not going anywhere. Arenado's not going anywhere. These are guys that he believes can help them going forward, can help them win next year. And so ultimately, if that is something that they rally around as we get a little bit closer, obviously, to the trade deadline about a week out, I just think it's I don't know that it's worth making the bet just because there's not a whole lot of value coming back to you. But I don't think he goes anywhere. I don't think Arenado does either. I'm
with you. I don't think he gets moved. The interesting thing is when the GM says we're going to be sellers, but we're not selling any of our key pieces, then you're not sellers. You're not really selling. Because if you're selling a Goldie or an Arenado, and I don't feel like they're willing to do that. All right, South side of Chicago has been an unmitigated disaster. And I know everybody wanted to blame Tony La Russa. I wonder how that holds up today. Tim Anderson, TA, they love him in Chicago. They don't love him as much as they used to, right? This was the fire starter. This was the guy at the top of the lineup to really kind of get those things going.
Right.
Not so much anymore. Plus $1.15. that he stays in the South Side. But it does feel like maybe new life is exactly what TA needs. Now, you look at the list, there's some usual suspects up there. I think he's going to get moved because I think once the White Sox start to sell, they could sell a lot of pieces, and it feels like Tim Anderson could be a key cog of it.
Yeah, I think there are some interesting spots. You know, you could look at the Dodgers, who are always willing to acquire guys and to spend, but the lineup there is already loaded, obviously. Giants at plus 550, intriguing. You know, they have tried to add and failed. We talked about it yesterday. The situation with Aaron Judge fell through, among others. You know, so this is a team that, you know, could certainly consider. I don't know if the Miami Marlins as an organization are the type of team that would make a move there. Not to like dovetail this conversation, but I just don't think Tim Anderson is ultimately the most interesting potential trade candidate in Chicago. You know, Obviously you could look at the White Sox. I think on the other side with the Cubs, Marcus Stroman is the one that fascinates me because he's having an incredible year, but he's not going to sign an extension with that team, and he would be a rental player. So it becomes, you know, where's a good fit? And looking at some of his numbers, I think the Astros have to have your attention at plus 900. You know, they've checked in already, according to USA Today. That is a team that always wants to try and win championships. And I think, you know, they're an arm away, potentially. And Marcus Stroman, I guess you could look at someone like Tampa with the same odds if they were willing to spend. The Yankees are probably a better long shot than someone like Tampa at 10-1 if they wanted to vault themselves back into this race. But I think Stroman is really intriguing.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll tell you, on any other team is 14-1 for Stroman. One team that will not be is the Mets. That bridge has been burned between Marcus Stroman and that fan base, that's for sure. Speaking of, I look at Bellinger, too, and I think Cody's going to be on the move here as well. And I know everybody in Philadelphia, City Brotherly Shove, they expect him to be sitting there next to Bryce Harper in that lineup. I don't think so. I got to tell you where I think Bellinger is going to go if the Cubs do move off him. Doesn't he feel like he's just going to be wearing pinstripes at plus 750? Because the way that another former Cub right now, Anthony Rizzo, is not hitting from the left side, they need somebody to hit from that side. And it just feels like right now, if you can't trust Riz to turn back the clock a little bit and you're waiting on Judge and Stanton, your big right-handed mashers, they're going to need a lefty slugger. And I think Bellinger at plus 750, at least for my money, Adam, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. I just, again, it sort of comes back to the conversation we were just having as it relates to Stroman with the Yankees. I don't know how you attempt to handicap whether or not this team is going to be a buyer at the deadline, because obviously, you know, if they believe that Aaron Judge returns and is what he's always been over these last couple of years anyway, then great. You know, you're right there because you're treading water, you're in the wild card race, you're right there. I'm just not sure, you know, how Brian Cashman looks at it and says, what are we willing to part with prospect-wise when we're already paying so much to so many different players to bring in a guy like Bellinger who, can help us now, but is now enough. You
know, what's so funny is look at Jordan Montgomery on this list here very quickly with the Cardinals. Of course, they get him from the Yankees. How funny would that conversation be? Oh, you want him back? Oh, you want him back now?
Yeah.
And that Bader deal that we did? Oh, now it's really going to cost you. So I think Montgomery, I don't even know if that conversation could happen. That's why I'm not going to look at the Yankees. But this is a lefty out there, man. Lefty pitching, starting pitching. He could really, if this is what they're talking about in St. Louis of not trading the Arenados and or the Goldschmidts, maybe it's a Montgomery on the move. He
Dodgers,
could command.
Top of the board. Dodgers.
Wow. Plus 5, you get 5-1 right now if you think he's going to L.A.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.